I started the movie review series with the premise only to review sneak previews so I couldn't choose which movie to review. And I really hoped I wouldn't get this one, but here we go. If you're just interested in the movie, I will have a timestamp to skip to that, but there's something I need to talk about first. It's always a question if you can separate the art from the artist. Like, can you still listen to Michael Jackson? Can you still watch movie with Kevin Spacey? Or can you still watch anything that is produced by the Weinstein Company? Are The Usual Suspects and Seven still among the greatest movies ever made, or need those movies to be judged and suffer under the action of one actor? I think there's a line, and if some movie or art cross it is, then it's condemned as a whole. In the aforementioned movies, I don't think that line was crossed, but with The Woman King, that's a different beast entirely. There are 4 quick points that I think should be mentioned. Like 1, if you start a hashtag to cancel this movie, and this hashtag is started by the very community you try to inspire, that is not a good sign. Second, when an actress of African descent leaves the production because of the historical inaccuracies, that is also not a good sign. When you have to change the movie from based on historic events to inspired by historic events to now it's fiction, after people call you out because they actually read a history book, that's a very bad sign. And finally, when you want to sell some of the worst people in the history of West Africa as heroes, then you cross that line. Let's ignore the things that Viola Davis on an individual level has said. I would grant her that she is contractually obligated because of the production and her starring in the movie. So I think it's hard to tell what she actually said because she meant it and what she was obligated, I wouldn't use the word force, but obligated to say because she's in the movie. The kingdom of the homie is portrayed as being forced into the slave trade and actually wanting to be a force for good, and that is basically the big lie of the movie. While Viola Davis' characters is not real, John Boyega's King Gezo is very much. And to summarize his true character, this king wrote a letter to the King of England pleading to be allowed to continue the slave trade. He also rose to power with the support of foreign slave traders in a coup, so he didn't earn being king the natural way, as far as you can say that's earned. The general at the time of this king, so basically the real life Viola Davis character, was very much pro-slavery and often led raids, and not very successfully, to capture slaves. There's a documented case that she led a raid on a sanctuary city. I cannot really pronounce it. I tried it. It's Aboe Kuta. It still exists in today's Benin, so you can look it up. This was a city built to protect people from slavers. These women warriors attacked with like 6,000 warriors, and only about 1,200 survived. So they weren't that successful. And just to get the point across what the Dahomey really were, they had a yearly festival where around 600 slaves and criminals were sacrificed in mass executions. There are reports that in one of those years the number was around 4,000, but I could only find one source for this number, but I think a mass execution of 500 people is bad enough. I think it's necessary to mention that the female empowerment theme that is attempted here is also kinda misplaced. By the observation of an English naval officer, the Agwe stated themselves, "We are men, not women," which seems to be corroborated by accounts that they always dressed and behaved like their male counterparts. As to the question what is true and what can we trust, we need to mention Kudu Lewis. I hope that is correct because it's a very important name. At the time of an interview, he was thought to be the last survivor of the Atlantic slave trade. After that, 2 women were identified that were also unfortunately part of the African American slave trade, but he remains the last one with clear memories of his life in Africa and the forced passage to America. Based on an interview with him in 1927, a book was written but not published. There are 2 reasons for this, or 2 main reasons. One is because it was in his native language, so a bit hard to translate. And the other reason is because he described in detail the involvement of African people in the slave trade, especially the Dahomey. The book, Barracoon, The Story of the Last Black Cargo, was fully published in 2018. So without pinpointing who exactly is to blame, it is certain that the movie tries to rewrite history. That's why in the first promotion it is always based on historic events, and now on some sites it's already listed as fiction. Every country has parts of the history they are ashamed of and they can be proud of, but it's history, we cannot change it. To accepting it doesn't mean to put blame on the people who live today, but we have to deal with history, we cannot bury it. And this movie tries to bury a horrible past, and no matter how uncomfortable it is, the past is known to us and this movie is a lie. So given that the crew and cast tried this, the art cannot be separated and the movie must be judged with this in mind. As an opposite example, you can look at Schindler's List. This movie omits things, changes the actions of some characters, but the actual history remains. You could say it's just a movie, who cares? But it isn't really, is it? I think you could separate 3 sorts of movies. Like 1, complete fiction, you can make up rules, you can do whatever you want. 2 is a continuation. If you have like the 4th movie of a series, the rules and laws are set by the previous movies and you have to work within that framework. And 3, historical movies. And this movie was marketed as a historical movie, so in that case the characters are set, the events are set, the motivations are set, and the framework you have to work in is very, very tight. In works of adaptation, they fall somewhere between 2 and 3, depending on the work that it adapts, but given these points, and this is marketed as a historic movie, it cannot be judged by itself and the history must be taken into account. With that out of the way, let's move on to the movies. There will be spoilers, so beware. The story is basically told in the trailer. A neighboring tribe threatens the Dahomey. There are some battles. In the midst of it all, there are a bunch of new recruits who start their training and then end their training and end their battle. There's a power struggle between the king, his wife and the generals. It's all very basic and has been done many times before. There are 2 kinda plot twists, but they are telegraphed like from the other side of the world, so they are not really plot twists, they're just plot points. The evil opposite general is of course a rapist and wants raped the lead character, because he has to be, to make him very, very evil. And the young female recruit is the daughter of the general, because of course she is. The movie expects this twist to be out of nowhere and very unexpected, but given the fact that movie like to pile on the evil attributes, like all of them on one character, and all the surprising good attributes to one character, it's basically expected instead of unexpected. There are some funny mic drop moments from the king when his wife, well, the lead wife of his wives, I think, talks back to him and she basically shuts her up. That's really funny. But then you have the typical army training, then you have the typical battles, and at the end you have the oh no, somebody is lost or captured moment, and the final battle arc. It's very predictable, it's kinda boring, And of course, there is the mentor dies in there because the mentor always has to die. That's basic plot points. It has to happen. It's like a law. The cast, how to put it without being too mean, well, there is a reason for the list A-list celebrity. And this is very much the B team. Basic as the plot is the performance. Sometimes the dialogue is difficult to understand, but overall it's acceptable. There are no real negative standout. That would be hero finds Tiffin, who is really bad, but he has so little screen time that he can't really ruin anything, and he is on the receiving end of a verbal bitch slap by the king, so that's very nice, but if anyone stands out negatively, it's him. The rest of the cast is kind of a big blob. Like, yeah, you have the one soldier who drinks a lot and wants to be the best warrior, and you have the other one who is sort of a shaman and the confidant of the general. I'm not sure if that counts as personality, but even if you would say those two are really good personalities and they stand out, that's it. The other one are just trainee A, trainee B, trainee C, and daughter of the general. There's some little interaction, but I honestly couldn't tell you anything about any of the characters except she did a joke and she did fall on her face. And that's basically it. Viola Davis and Jimmy Odukuya stand out as the generals. They both have this presence of a leader in a group. Like when you see them, you know he is in charge, she is in charge. There's no question about it. Viola Davis is still a great actress and she portrays the emotional impact that this character has very good. Basically, she is a hardened general, but in the same moment, her biggest fear appears back in her life and her hardest decision also appears back in her life. And that's taken an emotional toll that she denies herself. Like she shuts herself down, just be the warrior, here we go. Viola Davis portrays this crack in the armor, so to speak, very good. So whatever else I think about this movie, I cannot and I will not take away the fact that Viola Davis is a great actress. But then there are some really dumb things in the movie. Like the fact that these warriors intentionally hurt each other at every step of the way. Like there is in the trailer this dumb spear scene where they both stick a spear in their shoulder, and to prove what exactly? That they can gently push a spear with their shoulder? Like if there's one misstep, the spear goes into the shoulder and giving the time displays, that's it. Like there's no way of preparing the shoulder and one of the great warriors is out. That's just stupid. Doesn't make any sense. There's a reason why many soldiers around the world throughout the ages trained with wooden weapons, trained with steel blades that had no edge. That doesn't make any sense. Also, I'm not an expert, but I'm sure all the nice MMA moves these women pull out are not historical accurate. The action scenes are mostly okay. They involve a lot of twirling and spinning, which would end the battle very quickly for the one who is spinning and twirling. But there are other channels on YouTube who explain this far better, that basically if you spin and twirl and you take your eyes off your enemy, you're dead. And yes, there's the typical thing that a woman who is 160 defeats a 190 man in hand-to-hand combat. Okay, that's dumb, but whatever. So, the stunt crew did a good job. There, of course, are the typical scenes that in the background of a battle, people stand around and don't do anything. At the end, when they break out the prisoners in the city, you have like 20 warriors opening the cage, releasing the prisoners, and in the background, like 20 meters away, there are people drinking and looking in that direction and don't see anything. So, not very clever. And the final point, this is really, really, really stupid. Viola Davis deflects a musket shot with her sword. Like, the swords are kind of like machetes more, but there's a shot at her, she just deflects the shot and moves on like nothing happens. Like, okay. If you're still with me at this point, you may have noticed that the prelude is longer than the review. With good reason. The movie itself, it's very basic, it's not good, it is ridiculous at times, it's often boring and outdrawn. The acting by Viola Davis at times is very good, but it gets lost in the rest of the movie. The elements in this movie have been done before and often better, like the training, the battle, new training, new battle, and so on and so on. This is a by the numbers movie, and that would maybe get a 6 out of 10 if I'm generous, and the production value in this movie is quite high. But not only is this movie historically untrue, it tries to rewrite history. Therefore, the rating of the movie drops. Of course, there's a online rating which is much better, it's almost perfect, but when you look at the reviews, you see that the good reviews are only like 1 or 2 short sentences, so make of that what you will. Even without the important external points, this is still not a good movie. It is quite bad. I cannot recommend this movie. There are far better historical action movies out there, and giving its handling of the truth, so to speak, you should not watch this movie. The people who did this do not deserve your money. I would hope that the actors and the crew are already paid, so everything is fine there. But the people who are responsible for making this movie don't deserve money or success. If this wasn't shown in the sneak preview, I would not have watched this for the aforementioned reasons. It is important to let the movie studios know that this sort of truth bending and lying is not acceptable. And the box office is basically the only way to make them listen. So I hope this movie flops. It flops hard. And while it is a functioning movie, it doesn't deserve a cent of your money or a minute of your time. Just ignore it.